Chapter 454. The old patriarch of the dragon clan said in a voice filled with killing intent, "Kid, you dare to behave atrociously in my dragon clan? Die." Then his aura rose again, almost reaching the limit of a level 5 Grand Desolate Master. Seeing this, all the disciples of the dragon clan were secretly delighted. The old patriarch's aura was so strong and terrifying. After that kid transformed into a giant dragon, he was powerful and could fight against a level 1 Grand Desolate Master as a level 5 Grand Desolate Master. However, this was the end of it. It was impossible for him to challenge a level 5 Grand Desolate Master. In fact, they were right. With Immerse's strength, it was naturally impossible for him to challenge a level 5 Grand Desolate Master. If it was so easy to challenge a Grand Desolate Master, there wouldn't be so few Grand Desolate Masters in this world. Moreover, this was a peak level 5 Grand Desolate Master. He was almost the number 1 person in the entire continent. How could Immerse defeat such an existence? However, Immerse still had his trump card. He sneered and let out a dragon's roar. "So what if I behave atrociously?" Then with a thought, another figure appeared in the sky without any warning. Its 1,500-meter-long body meandered in the sky like a dragon. With the sea dragon clone, "What could you do to me if I peed, let alone behave atrociously in the dragon clan?" The sea dragon clone was 1,500 meter long and had a diameter of more than 70 meter long. 1/3 of the sky in the Dragon Valley was occupied by this body. The light in the Dragon Valley was much dimmer now. Its scales shone with a dark black luster under the sunlight. On its forehead, there were 2 huge bulges that seemed to be swollen. 4 thick and sharp claws, each of which was like a towering tree. It opened its mouth and let out a roar that seemed to want to swallow everything in the world. Ayo, roar. With this roar, all living things within a 500-kilometer radius trembled. When all the disciples of the Dragon Clan saw this, their expressions changed drastically. Just a moment ago, they thought that their old patriarch was already invincible in this world and could easily kill this brat. But now, compared to this huge creature, their old patriarch seemed so small. The old clan leader of the dragon tribe was also secretly shocked at this moment. This creature's aura was similar to his. But why did he feel an inexplicable sense of fear when facing it from afar? Was it because its body was too big? Impossible. He had lived for almost 1,000 years and he had seen many creatures that were larger than it. However, there was no creature that could make him feel that kind of fear. Why was this happening? Just as he was secretly astonished, the sea dragon clone had already moved. Its figure flickered as it flew toward the Dragon Clan's patriarch. Although the Dragon Clan's clan leader was terrified, he had no way out. If he retreated, the Dragon Clan would be exterminated. He roared, "You're courting death." At the next moment, a genetic martial art condensed in his right arm. Moreover, the moment his genetic weapon appeared, its edges had already lit up. Clearly, energy had been added to it. However, he didn't shoot out this energy. Instead, he attached it to his genetic martial art to fight. High-level battles often required the most basic fighting methods. The reason why his genetic martial art didn't release energy was because that kind of fighting method wasted too much energy. Moreover, shooting energy from a distance would give the enemy time to dodge. Therefore, this kind of fighting method was far worse than adding energy to the weapon before fighting in close combat. At this moment, he was using this kind of fighting method. His figure flashed and he was already behind the sea dragon clone. His speed was extremely fast. He must have activated his wind attribute talent. When he arrived behind the sea dragon clone, his genetic martial art stabbed fiercely at the back of the sea dragon clone. Crackle. A few ear-piercing sounds were heard. The back of the sea dragon clone rubbed against his genetic martial art, creating a series of sparks. However, that was all. After this series of sparks, he looked at the back of the sea dragon clone. Not to mention being injured, there wasn't even a trace left behind. Seeing this, the Dragon Clan's patriarch was shocked. What a strong defense. At this moment, the sea dragon clone turned around and whipped its tail over. He hurriedly used his wind attribute energy and dodged quickly. The sea dragon clone's giant tail, which was more than 70 meters thick, narrowly flashed under him. He thought to himself that it was a close call. This guy's speed wasn't slow either. However, before he could finish his thought, he suddenly felt a gust of wind blow past. He was involuntarily swept into the gust of wind. It turned out that the sea dragon clone's huge tail swept past too quickly. the airflow brought him in. This was the disadvantage of being a wind attribute cultivator. His body was too light. Fortunately, as a wind attribute cultivator, he still had a good understanding of the wind. Relying on his experience, he quickly stabilized his body. However, just as he stabilized his body, he found that a huge shadow had already smashed towards him. Bang! Before he could say the verb in his mouth, he was hit by the sea dragon clone's huge tail. It turned out that Immorse knew that this person was a wind attribute cultivator and was extremely fast. It was impossible to hit him with a single blow. Therefore, his first attack was only to stir up a gust of wind and sweep the old guy into the airflow. When he was involuntarily swept in, the sea dragon clone's second wave of attack had already arrived. There was nowhere for him to hide. Boom! The old patriarch of the dragon clan was like a fly that had been hit by a fly swatter as he crashed to the ground. He was smashed into the ground. Crack, crack. Cracks began to spread all around him. All the disciples of the dragon clan were aghast when they saw this. They had thought that the old patriarch would definitely be able to destroy that brat. In the end, the old patriarch couldn't withstand a single blow from that giant creature. At this moment, in the huge pit on the ground, the old patriarch's face was covered in blood. Most of the aura on his body had dissipated. He had never dreamed that he, who was almost the #1 person on the continent, would one day be unable to withstand a single blow from a giant creature. At this moment, he was constantly trying to circulate the wind attribute energy in his body. He wanted to escape. Even if he knew that his time was up, even if he escaped today, he wouldn't live for long. However, survival was human instinct. Even he was no exception. However, at this moment, on the sea dragon clone's body, a blood-red tentacle shot over like an arrow. Puff! It pierced into his body. Then the tentacle retracted. The barbs on the tentacle immediately hooked his body and dragged him into the air. Chapter 455. A tentacle shot out from the body of the sea dragon clone. It dragged the old patriarch of the dragon clan who was trying to escape into the air. The old patriarch of the dragon clan wanted to struggle. But soon he realized that the tentacle had already grown into hundreds and thousands of tiny tentacles in his body. They crawled all over his muscles. If he tried to break free by force, his body would be torn apart. At the same time as these tentacles continued to extend, his body was in intense pain. He kept struggling and his legs kept trembling. However, this pain didn't last long. At a certain moment, hiss, the tentacles in his body quickly separated, tearing his body into hundreds and thousands of pieces. At this point, the strongest person of the dragon clan, the #1 person on the continent, the old patriarch of the dragon clan, was dead. At the same time, the expressions of everyone in the dragon clan changed drastically. The old patriarch, who they had placed high hopes on, couldn't even last half a minute in front of this huge creature. He was easily torn to pieces. Then was there any hope for the rest of them to survive? Thinking of this, they all turned to look at the patriarch. Seeing this, the patriarch of the dragon clan shook his head helplessly and closed his eyes in pain. At this moment he had already seen through it. The dragon clan was finished. The dragon clan, which had been passed down for tens of thousands of years, was really ruined in his hands. He was the sinner of the dragon clan. Even if he died, he would have no face to see the ancestors of the dragon clan. However, he couldn't just watch the dragon clan be destroyed like this. He glanced at all the dragon clan grand desolate masters and said, "Disciples of the dragon clan, scatter and run. No matter who escapes, don't forget that you are the disciples of the dragon clan. One day you must revitalize the dragon clan." All the disciples of the dragon clan were stunned when they heard this. They didn't expect that their dragon clan, known as the strongest faction on the continent, would one day have to run away. But under such circumstances, what else could they do but run? Thus, these 100 or so grand desolate masters fled in all directions. However, could they escape? In front of the speed of Immorse and the sea dragon clone, their so-called escape looked like a joke. With a thought from Immorse, more than 50 huge tentacles grew out of the sea dragon clone's body. Each tentacle is like a sharp arrow, piercing towards the bodies of these grand desolate masters. The bodies of the grand desolate masters were very strong. Even the genetic weapons of the desolate masters would not be able to harm them if they did not add energy. But in front of these tentacles, it was like a piece of paper. Puff, 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 puff. Everyone, including the Patriarch and the Great Elder, was pierced by the tentacles. Moreover, once these tentacles entered their bodies, they would quickly absorb their blood and use the nourishment of this blood to grow roots in their bodies. These roots would crawl all the muscles in their bodies at an extremely fast speed. In the end, if they used too much force, their muscles would be torn apart. It was literally being torn to pieces. Moreover, even if they didn't use any strength, the tentacles would quickly tear them apart. Rip, rip, rip. With the sound of cloth being torn apart, these people's bodies were all torn apart. In that instant, the entire Dragon Valley finally fell completely silent. Apart from the sound of flowing water, there was no other sound. The entire dragon race, the #1 faction on the continent, had been destroyed by Immorse alone. Of course, one could not say that Immorse was the #1 person on the continent just because of this. The flame-beginning continent was huge. 56 states, and each state was much, much larger than the previous Earth. In such a big place, Immorse did not know how many hidden experts there were. However, he knew that after annihilating the Dragon Clan, he had already entered the ranks of the top powerhouses. As long as he was given some more time, when he became a level 10 Desolate Master, the Sea Dragon clone might become a level 10 Grand Desolate Master. At that time, he would truly be standing at the top of the pyramid of the flame-beginning continent. Because no matter how exaggerated it was, there had never been an existence stronger than a Grand Desolate Master on the flame-beginning continent. What kind of realm was stronger than a Grand Desolate Master? No one knew. At this time, Immorse looked at the kill points in his mind. Kill points: 2316001000000. Every Grand Desolate Master killed gave him 10 kill points. Next, if he wanted to get more kill points, he would have to go to those hunting grounds to hunt infected creatures. Otherwise, he could not go on a killing spree all over the continent and kill those Desolate Masters. After all, although he was a bloodthirsty demon dragon, he had evolved from a human. He still had a human mind. It was impossible for him to go on a killing spree. Next, Immorse went through all of the dragon race's storehouses and treasure vaults. Many things of the dragon race could be used in the base. For example, the dragon race had an exaggerated number of hundreds of millions of crystal source stones. And this was only their inventory. In their Dragon Valley, there were as many as 3 crystal source veins. Immorse had the thought of simply moving the base here. But after thinking about it, he gave up for the time being. The base had just been developed and the factory and other things had just been built. If he moved now, it would be a waste. However, he could not just leave the 3 crystal source veins to others. Immorse thought about it and left more than 100 virus clones here. These virus clones basically had the strength of a level 5 Desolate Master and a level 5 Long Xianxia. 100 level 5 Desolate Master and a level 5 Long Xianxia combined were equivalent to the strength of a few Grand Desolate Masters. In the end, Immorse put all the things he had plundered into his micro-world. Then with a thought, he teleported 1,000 kilometers away. Now everyone in the dragon race had been wiped out. The dragon race's chief, Great Elder, and their old chief were all dead. Naturally, the spatial restriction could no longer take effect. Immorse easily teleported thousands of kilometers away. Then he found the right direction and flew in the direction of Hunting Island #1. 2 days after Immorse left, the news gradually spread. There were overwhelming reports on the internet, on TV, and in all kinds of media. Shocking news. Dragon Valley slaughtered, dragon race annihilated. Who wiped out the #1 force in one night? Sorry, dragon race. Dragon Valley is not Dragon Valley. Sorry, #1 force. You are not enough. These reports were crazily spread among all the media. Everyone's first reaction when they heard the news was disbelief. Scram to the side. Dragon race annihilated? Kid, you must be crazy. I heard that the #1 force of the dragon race has 40 to 50 Grand Desolate Masters. Who dares to touch them? 40 to 50? I heard that there are 70 to 80. Whoever dares to touch them is courting death. Chapter 456. After Immorse annihilated the Dragon Clan, he left the Dragon Valley and returned to the base. At the same time, the news of the annihilation of the Dragon Valley had spread across the entire continent. The annihilation of the Dragon Valley could be seen everywhere on the internet, television, various news media, and gossip literature. On a certain online forum, the Dragon Valley, which had been established for tens of thousands of years, was annihilated overnight. Who did this? The Dragon Valley is the #1 force on the continent. All the other forces could only tremble in fear in front of the Dragon Valley. But now it has been annihilated. This is unbelievable. I was thinking of visiting the Dragon Clan when I became stronger in a few years. I didn't expect the Dragon Clan to be annihilated. According to reliable sources, the Dragon Clan has more than 70 Grand Desolate Masters and more than 100 Spiritual Psyche Masters. This strength is enough to crush any force on the continent. Now that it has been annihilated, the person who did this must be extremely powerful. In a certain restaurant, people were watching the news report on the television and the aerial footage while eating. On the screen, the entire Dragon Valley had turned blood red. There were no trees, flowers, plants, animals, or humans. This was a stark contrast to the footage of the Dragon Valley in the past. An old man who looked to be in his 60s was shocked. To be able to annihilate the Dragon Valley, that person's strength is simply heaven-defying. Are you kidding? The Dragon Valley has more than 200,000 Dragon Clan members. Is that something that can be annihilated by one person? Someone beside him immediately questioned. The old man in his 60s shook his head slowly. Young man, you know nothing about strength. Logically speaking, it's impossible for anyone to do this. To annihilate all the Dragon Clan members in the Dragon Valley, it would require a very large team. The movement of such a large team is likely to attract attention. But until now there have been no reports of such a team. This can only mean one thing: that team doesn't exist. So, it can only be someone with heaven-defying strength who annihilated the entire Dragon Clan. When I passed by Hunting Island #1, I saw a similar scene. All the creatures on the island were turned into blood-red powder. There was almost no life there. There was a base in the center of Hunting Island #1. Out of curiosity, I went there to investigate. Although the people there didn't say much, it could be inferred from their words that they had a very powerful leader. It was their leader who destroyed the rest of the creatures on the first Hunting Island and brought them to the first Hunting Island. Everyone was surprised when they heard this. But I heard that there was a change in the first Hunting Island, and it was taken over by a group of newcomers. The leader of that group of rookies has such powerful strength? The old man shook his head. No one can say for sure. In short, I'm guessing that it's probably the new island master of Hunting Island #1. In a small city at the border of the Cloud State, Han Jianxing was sitting on the grass, enjoying the scenery on the other side of the river while drinking wine. At this moment, Han Lubai quickly walked over. Dad, the Dragon Clan has been exterminated. Han Jianxing was taken aback. In his eyes, the Dragon Clan was the most powerful force in the world. Even though he was known to be able to free 16 states with a single sword, he was still extremely insignificant in the face of the Dragon Clan. More than 50 years ago, he had made a trip to the Dragon Clan. At that time, he could feel that there were no less than 100 Grand Desolate Masters in the Dragon Clan. How could such a powerful Dragon Clan be exterminated? Sounded like a joke. However, when he saw the aerial image of the Dragon Valley on Han Lubai's multifunction watch, he finally believed it. Dad, who do you think did it? Han Lubai asked. Han Jianxing pondered for a moment and replied. I can't think of anyone in this world. However, if I have to name one person, I guess it's only that kid, Immortal. Huh? Han Lubai opened her mouth in surprise and shook her head. Dad, when you said that he was the one who destroyed the Celestial Gold Trisect, I reluctantly believed you. But now you're saying that he was the one who destroyed the Dragon Clan. Isn't that too exaggerated? Even you, a level 2 Grand Desolate Master, can't do it. How could he do it? Han Jianxing said. On the surface, that guy's strength is only that of a Grand Desolate Master, but in battle he can often erupt with strength far stronger than a level 1 Grand Desolate Master. And he can transform into a dragon. Most importantly, he can summon a creature that is 1,000 meters long. And that creature's strength far exceeds his own. Han Lubai shook her head again. Even so, it's impossible to destroy the Dragon Clan. Han Jianxing nodded. It's indeed impossible. But a moment later, looking at the setting sun, he spoke again slowly. But nothing is impossible when it comes to this kid. Of course, only a few people could speculate that all this was done by Immortal. Most people didn't know who had destroyed the Dragon Clan. The internet was full of wild guesses. Some people even said that only a god could destroy the Dragon Clan. On the first Hunting Island, Immerse saw this on the internet and smiled faintly. He was actually called a god. This really surprised him. But speaking of God, he was indeed a god in the miniature world. But the miniature world was really too small. It would be interesting if he could upgrade the miniature world to a planet in the future. At the same time, with the improvement of his strength, he felt that the level of the Dragon Palace should also be upgraded. The Dragon Clan had so many Grand Desolate Masters. Although the other powerful forces on the continent weren't as strong as the Dragon Clan, each force should have a few Grand Desolate Masters. The base could only defend against attacks below the Grand Desolate Master level, which was obviously not enough. Thinking of this, Immerse said in his mind, "System, sign in after destroying the Dragon Clan." The system's voice sounded, "Sign in successful. Sign in event. Destroy the Pseudo-Dragon Clan. Sign in reward. Dragon Palace upgrade." Immerse nodded with a smile. As expected, the Dragon Palace could be upgraded again. It takes 48 hours to upgrade the Dragon Palace. During the upgrade, the defense system of the Dragon Palace cannot be activated. The warning system of the Dragon Palace cannot be activated. Do you want to upgrade? Immerse nodded. Upgrade. The next moment, a progress bar appeared in his mind. It showed, upgrade progress 0%. In the next 2 days, Immerse was free. Every day, apart from eating and sleeping, he would accompany him around the island. At noon 2 days later, the progress bar in his mind finally reached 100%. Chapter 457. 2 days later at noon, the progress bar in Immerse's mind finally reached 100%. At the same time, a system notification appeared in his mind. Frowny face. Dragon Palace successfully upgraded. Upgrade details. 1. Absolute defense. Dragon Palace can withstand any attack from a Grand Desolate Master below level 10, including a level 10 Grand Desolate Master. 2. Follow your heart. After this upgrade, Dragon Palace will be more convenient to move. As long as the Dragon King wills it, Dragon Palace will move to the desired location. 3. Refining platform. After this upgrade, Dragon Palace will have a new refining platform. Anyone below the Grand Desolate Master level would only need 10 days to become a Grand Desolate Master after entering the Desolate refining platform. Host cannot use it. Immerse slowly nodded his head as he read. Every one of them was very useful. Absolute defense. In the history of the Flaming Land, no one could invade Dragon Palace. Follow your heart. In the future, no matter where Dragon Palace is, it will be very convenient. The refining platform was even more useful. With the refining platform, Dragon Palace will be able to produce a Grand Desolate Master every 10 days. However, the last sentence in the brackets was a little hurtful. What did it mean that the host could not use it? Originally, he thought that with the refining platform he could be promoted to Grand Desolate Master after 10 days. However, the host could not use it. What a scam. The system seemed to have felt Immerse's emotions and prompted in his mind frowny face. Although the host cannot use the refining platform, with the refining platform, the host's level can be linked to the number of Grand Desolate Masters produced by the refining platform. What does that mean? Immerse asked. The system replied frowny face. When the refining platform produces 10 Grand Desolate Masters, the host's level will automatically increase by 1. When 100 Grand Desolate Masters are produced, the host's level will increase by 1 and so on. Immerse thought for a while. Producing 1 Grand Desolate Master required 10 days. Producing 10 Grand Desolate Masters required 100 days. 1 level in 100 days was a little slow. If other people knew what Immerse was thinking, they would probably want to kick him to death. Normally, after becoming a Grand Desolate Master, they would need to train hard for 10 years, dozens of years, or even hundreds of years to increase by 1 level. You don't do anything and you can increase by 1 level in 3 months. You think it's slow? Why don't you just go to heaven? Immerse suddenly had an idea and asked the system, "Can I move the Dragon Palace into the miniature world?" As long as he could move the Dragon Palace to the miniature world, everything there would be under his control. Time was not a problem at all. The system replied frowny face. In the miniature world, you are already an omnipotent god. Do you still need to shorten the time to increase your strength? If that's the case, then I can't. The system poured a bucket of cold water on Immerse. That won't do. The host can only use divine power to increase his strength in the miniature world and cannot be forced into the real world. Immorse could not help but shake his head. The system had seen through it. Since he could not forcefully increase his strength, Immorse did not dwell on it. However, he secretly comforted himself that the increase in his strength was already very abnormal. Don't be too perverted and leave others a way out. As the saying goes, leave a way out for others so that we can meet again in the future. After that, Immorse followed the system's instructions and came to the center of the Dragon Palace. Sure enough, a stone platform had already appeared there. The stone platform was not tall, only about a foot tall. It was also not big, just enough for one person to sit on. Immorse carefully studied it for a while, but could not figure out what the stone platform was made of. He used dragon's telekinesis to investigate and found nothing special about it. Following the principle of not thinking about things that he did not understand, Immorse immediately called Emma over. Emma had not seen Immorse for a long time. When she saw Immorse, there was a subtle gentleness in her eyes. Immorse did not notice this. She pointed at the black stone platform and said to Immorse, "Sit on it and see what changes will happen in 10 days. Emma glanced at her son beside her. Immorse naturally knew what she meant and said, "Don't worry, Happy will take care of your son for these 10 days. Emma was naturally not worried about Immorse, and she was not worried about Happy either. She nodded and sat on the platform. As soon as she sat on it, she felt a majestic energy enter her body from the stone platform. This energy came suddenly and was extremely majestic. She, who was unprepared, was almost unable to bear it. Fortunately, this energy seemed to be limited to a level that she could barely bear. In just a few minutes, the energy she absorbed was more than what she usually absorbed from desolate beasts in a month. Emma could not help but feel happy. Immorse said to her, "Calm your mind and start cultivating." Emma hurriedly nodded, "Yes." She then calmed her mind and began to exhale and inhale slowly. Immorse could also clearly feel Emma's aura rapidly increasing. Immorse said, "Don't come down during this period. You will know the result in 10 days. Emma was cultivating and did not have time to answer. But her eyebrows twitched slightly, indicating that she understood. Then, Immorse called Happy over and told her to take care of Emma's son for the next 10 days. For the next 10 days, Immorse lived a leisurely and carefree life. With his current strength in the Azure Dragon clone, he was definitely a top-tier expert on the continent, even if he was not invincible. There was also nothing urgent to do. He did not need to seize the time to increase his strength like in the past. So he planned to stay in the Dragon Palace for a few more days to see the effects of the refining platform. 10 days was both slow and fast. Immorse did not seem to realize that 10 days had passed. In these 10 days, Emma had been cultivating on the refining platform. Immorse had already instructed that no one was allowed to approach the refining platform. The others did not know what Emma was doing. But they knew that Immorse's orders were imperial edicts. So in these 10 days, no one dared to approach the refining platform. Even the room where the refining platform was located was not approached by anyone. With Emma's current strength, it was completely possible for her to not eat or drink during cultivation. Naturally, she did not need to excrete. At noon, Immorse brought Emma's son to the refining platform. He opened the demonic dragon's eye and saw that Emma was still a 6th-level desolate hunter. But Emma's aura was much stronger than before. Judging by her aura, she had reached the peak of a 10th-level desolate hunter. Looking at the time, there were still more than 2 minutes to the 10 days. Immorse waited quietly. 2 minutes later, the aura on Emma's body rose again. In just 10 seconds, it was dozens of times stronger than before. This time the aura rose very quickly and violently. But the time was very short. In just 5 seconds it stopped. Chapter 458. Emma's aura was rising at an extremely fast speed. In just 5 seconds, it had increased by dozens of times. After 5 seconds it stopped rising. It began to gradually stabilize. At this time, Immorse looked again with the mystic dragon's eye. Name, Emma. Race, blood clan. Level 1 Great Desolate Master. Immorse was puzzled. Shouldn't it be a super-evolved blood clan or a super-evolved blood clan? The system's voice came frowny face all humanoid creatures, whether zombies, blood clan, werewolves, or zombies, after reaching the level of a Great Desolate Master, they are called Great Desolate Masters. Immorse nodded. It was easier to remember this. It saved him the trouble of having to calculate the level of a super-evolved blood clan in his mind when he met one. Just like when he was learning English, when he encountered an English word, the meaning of the word didn't appear in his mind first. Instead, he had to translate it into Chinese first, and then he knew what the word meant. Troublesome. It was a lot easier to do this now. Emma opened her eyes at this time. She didn't pay attention to the changes in her body at first. Instead, she got off the refining platform and pulled her son over. She held her son's face to see if he had lost weight these days. Not only did her son not lose weight, he seemed to have gained a bit of weight. She stroked her son's head and said to Happy next to her, "Thank you." Happy shook his head and gestured, "Sister Emma, we're all family, you don't have to say this." Emma nodded, but her eyes were still filled with gratitude. For her, raising her strength to a Great Desolate Master was not as important as taking care of her son for 10 days. After seeing that her son was fine, she noticed the change in her strength. She felt the aura in her body and the surging energy in her body. She looked at her hands in disbelief. Then she looked at Immorse. I was promoted to a Great Desolate Master? Immorse smiled and nodded. Emma was even more in disbelief. While circulating the energy in her body, she said in surprise, 10 days. Immorse nodded again. Emma was even more surprised. Her strength was only equivalent to a level 6 Desolate Master. Now in just 10 days she became a Great Desolate Master. This was a little too exaggerated. But her surprise didn't last long. After all, in front of Immorse, even more ridiculous things had happened. Disregarding everything else, she suspected that the news of the Dragon Clan's annihilation that had spread throughout the continent in the past few days had something to do with Immorse. There were many experts in this world. There were also people stronger than Immorse. But who could destroy the entire Dragon Clan in a single night? Other than Immorse, she couldn't think of anyone else. "Thank you, Master," Emma said gratefully. Immorse shook his head and said, "Call the little monk over." Emma immediately nodded and brought her son to find the little monk. After a while he found the little monk. Although the little monk had followed Emma here, he kept shaking his head and mumbling to himself. "This kind of algorithm, there's a problem." "That's right, using the Sorgate's algorithm should be useful." Then he shook his head. That doesn't seem right either." It seemed that this guy had gone mad. As a desolate hunter, he did not care about cultivation at all. He only cared about mechas. But now that he had reached Immorse's level, he deeply understood that mechas were basically useless in battles between desolate hunters, especially Grand Desolate Masters. He used to think that mechas were the future of the base. So he did not hesitate to spend a lot of time and energy to equip the base with a large number of mechas. But in battles between desolate hunters and above, mechas were basically live targets. Now mecha technology in the Flaming Land had reached a bottleneck. It was difficult to improve in a short period of time. Wasting time on mecha was not a rational thing to do. So, Immorse wanted to let the little monk get out of the mecha as soon as possible and embark on the path of cultivation. "Monk, sit on it and cultivate." Immorse pointed at the refining platform and said. Hearing this, the little monk shook his head like a baby. No, cultivating is too time-consuming. You must know that wasting time is equivalent to murdering for money. Boss, you're not really thinking of harming me, are you? Ba, you're too kind. Immorse laughed. With that little money of yours, is it worth it for me to scheme for you? Hearing this, the little monk had a look of disbelief. He tightened his collar and took 2 steps back. Boss, are you thinking of raping me? Immorse glared at him. Get lost. The little monk said and was about to leave. Immorse was speechless. Sit on it and cultivate for 10 days. Otherwise you're not allowed to touch mechas anymore. Immorse's words had a hint of hidden meaning. Seeing this, the little monk was slightly stunned. Then he sat on it reluctantly. But there was still a look of pain between his brows. Obviously, in his opinion, sitting here and cultivating was too much of a waste of time. If he had the time, he might as well study mechas. But since his boss was angry, he did not dare to say anything more. In order to continue studying mechas in the future, he could only endure for now. Immorse was still afraid that the little monk would not be honest, so he said to Emma, "Watch him." Emma quickly nodded. Yes. Therefore, under Emma's strict supervision, the little monk did not dare to leave for the past 10 days. He could only cultivate there obediently. 10 days later, when Emma said time is up, the little monk could not wait to jump up. He planned to run back to his workshop and continue studying mechas. Not seeing mechas for 10 days was like not eating or drinking for 10 days. He was already unbearably thirsty. But when he jumped up, his body jumped up. Unexpectedly, his whole body crashed into the roof. He directly crashed through the roof. The little monk was so shocked that he kept shouting in the air. Ba, oh my god, Ba f asterisk c f asterisk c f asterisk c f asterisk c f asterisk c. After a while he finally landed on the ground. He raised his hands and looked at them in astonishment. This is... Emma and the others also came out at this time. Emma's heart was also filled with shock. The little monk had also advanced to a Grand Desolate Master. One must know that the little monk was only a level 1 Desolate Master before. In just 10 days he advanced to a level 1 Desolate Master. On average he would advance by 1 level every day. This speed was simply unheard of. In her shock, Emma could not help but answer the little monk's question. You advanced to a Grand Desolate Master. The little monk scratched his bald head in surprise. Big sister, you are not joking, right? In 10 days I advanced by a whole realm. Let me tell you, if you lie you will be going to hell. You have to think thrice before you speak, Ba. Emma laughed. Can't you feel it for yourself? The little monk nodded. You are right. Soon after, the energy in his body began to circulate. Chapter 459. When the small monk heard Emma's words, he tried to circulate the energy in his body. After doing so, he immediately shouted, F***CK. He felt that the energy in his body was unprecedentedly abundant. Not only was it abundant, it was even majestic. The energy in his body was like raging waves. Before the first wave subsided, another wave arose. After a moment, he felt that the aura in his body far exceeded that of a desolate hunter. He looked at himself in disbelief, then at Emma and finally at Immorse. Boss said, I became a Grand Desolate Master? Immorse smiled and said, yes. The small monk was pleasantly surprised. F***C so magical? He turned his head and looked at the black and unremarkable refining platform. Boss, this thing is so powerful. Immorse did not say anything else. Go and call Guojutao over. The small monk nodded. Yes, boss. After saying that, he quickly left. However, when he was about to walk out of the workshop, he suddenly thought of something. He turned his head and asked, Oh right, did I say F***C just now? Immorse asked back, What do you think? The small monk had a face of regret. Sorry master, I said vulgar words again. I deserved to be beaten. After saying that, he slapped his mouth twice and quickly turned around and left. Immorse and Happy looked at each other and smiled. This small monk was really a clown. However, with such a person by their side, their mood would be much better. Next, after another 10 days, Guojutao also successfully became a Grand Desolate Master. 3 Grand Desolate Masters in a month. This matter caused a huge commotion in the entire base. Sai, did you know? Mr. Imo has a magical platform. If you cultivate on it, you can become a Grand Desolate Master in 10 days. In this month, our base had 3 more Grand Desolate Masters. F***CK, are you serious? Grand Desolate Masters are the top existences in the continent. I heard that the other Grand Desolate Masters are basically old fellows who have cultivated for 300 to 500 years. You said that Mr. Imo can make a Grand Desolate Master in 10 days? That's too scary. Be careful with your words. What do you mean by Mr. Imo can make a Grand Desolate Master in 10 days? Does everyone have the chance to become a Grand Desolate Master? In the entire continent, there were only about 200 Grand Desolate Masters. Previously, when the dragon race was destroyed, more than 100 of them had died. Now, of the billions of people in the base, there were less than 100 Grand Desolate Masters left. Now the base was able to produce 3 Grand Desolate Masters in a short month. How could these people not be excited? Of course, at the same time that this matter caused a huge commotion, Guojutao had already issued a death order. This matter was strictly prohibited from being spread. Those who violated the order would be killed and their entire families would be sent back to Earth. Perhaps there were people who were not afraid of death, but sending their whole families back to Earth would make them afraid. After living here for more than 2 years, no one wanted to go back to Earth. Whether it was the level of technological development or the strength of the people's cultivation physiques, it was far from what Earth could compare with. What was more, the Dragon Palace was right here. Cultivating in Dragon Palace was already much better than cultivating in the outside world. Now there was this black stone platform that could allow one to become a Grand Desolate Master within 10 days. In other words, as long as they were patient enough, everyone in their base would definitely be able to reach the Grand Desolate Master level. They had reached the pinnacle of the Flaming Dawn continent. It had to be known that after becoming a Grand Desolate Master, one's lifespan would exceed 500 years. And the higher the level of a Grand Desolate Master, the longer their lifespan would be. Who did not want to live for a few more hundred years? Therefore, they naturally would not be stupid enough to violate the order and spread this matter. Seeing that everything was more or less arranged, Immerse called Guojutao over. He said to Guojutao, "I have to go out for a period of time. Next, you will organize the people in the base to cultivate on the desolate refining platform. Everyone will cultivate for 10 days and everyone will be able to become a Grand Desolate Master." When Guojutao heard Immerse's last sentence, his entire body trembled with excitement. Previously, everyone had guessed that everyone would be able to become a Grand Desolate Master if they cultivated on the platform. However, when it came from Immerse's mouth, it was a different matter. Think about it, if there were more than 50,000 people in the base and every one of them was a Grand Desolate Master, what kind of scene would that be? Of course, if each person cultivated for 10 days, 50,000 people would need more than 500,000 days. That was more than 1,400 years. By that time, everyone here would be dead. However, this at least gave them hope. Furthermore, they had to plan properly and set up a reward system. Only those who performed well would be able to cultivate on the desolate refining platform. Then these people would definitely be motivated. This would be beneficial to the base's long-term development. Of course, there were some drawbacks in this, but as long as they planned properly, these drawbacks could be avoided. Furthermore, with Mr. Mo's ability, he might come up with something even more powerful in a few days. It could cultivate faster than the desolate refining platform. Then everyone would be able to become a Grand Desolate Master. Thinking of this, Guojutao nodded and said respectfully, "Mr. Mo, don't worry and go. I will arrange everything." When Immerse heard this, he scratched his head and said, "Your words sound weird." Guojutao also realized that something was wrong and hurriedly said, "What I mean is, Mr. Mo, don't worry and go. I will take care of everything here for you." Immerse shook his head and said, "It still doesn't feel right." Guojutao coughed dryly and said, "In short, Mr. Mo, don't worry." Immerse stroked his chin and nodded, "Yes, it will be fine this time." After Guojutao left, Immerse first put Happy into the micro-world. Now, in the micro-world, Immerse was God. He changed this world according to his own wishes. In the sky, there were colorful phoenixes flying. The sun was the three-legged golden crow. A waterfall fell from the sky like the Milky Way. In the sky close to the ground, there were huge white cranes flying slowly. In the lake, there were colorful koi fish swimming. On the grass, there were flowers of different colors. If Happy got tired of these, he could change the world with just a thought. Most importantly, Immerse thought of something. Since he was in this world, he was a godlike existence. The rules of this world were set by him. Did that mean that he could make Happy speak? When he thought of this, his heart could not help but beat wildly. If that was the case, even if Happy could only speak in this world, he would still be very happy. When he thought of this, Immerse could not help but feel nervous. His nervousness stemmed from fear. He was afraid that in this world, as a god, he would not be able to make Happy, who was a heaven's speaker, speak. Therefore he was a little hesitant. After a while, a thought appeared in his mind. In this world, heaven's speaker could speak. Chapter 460. Wands and phoenixes flew in the sky. Mandarin ducks swam in the lake. Immerse was so nervous that his palms were sweating. He swallowed his saliva and his heart was beating wildly. He had seen many storms and waves. He could remain calm even if Mount Tai collapsed in front of him. But at this moment he was extremely nervous. What if he failed? This was similar to a daring person confessing to someone. What if she didn't accept him? How would they get along in the future? After a while, Immerse gathered his courage and said, Happy tried to speak. Happy was completely immersed in shock at this magical world. After hearing Immerse's words, she gestured with her hands. Brother Immo, this world is too magical. It's too beautiful. Immerse knew that Happy had misunderstood his meaning. This feeling was similar to being misunderstood as being a hooligan when he confessed. He hurriedly shook his head. No, what I mean is that you might be able to speak in this world. Happy was stunned. After a while she nodded. She opened her mouth but no words came out. She couldn't speak since she was born. Even if she could suddenly speak, she couldn't speak in an instant. Her lips opened and closed and opened again. After a full half a minute, she seemed to have gathered all the strength in her body and stuttered 3 words. Brother. Oh, brother. At this moment Immerse only felt a huge happiness suddenly and fiercely crashed into his heart. Then it exploded in his heart and completely drowned him. He had thought countless times that Happy would be able to speak. He had also heard Happy call out Brother Immo countless times in his dreams. When Happy really said it, Immerse didn't dare to believe it. He couldn't help but swallow again and say it again. Immerse wasn't the only one who didn't dare to believe it. Happy also didn't dare to believe it. Ever since she was born, she had never opened her mouth to speak. She didn't expect that after more than 20 years she could finally speak. Her lips opened and closed again. After a while she said 3 words. Brother. Immo. This time, although she still stuttered, it was much smoother than the previous time. Happy's eyes were already filled with tears of happiness, and he was so excited that he could not stop crying. Immo. Big brother. Big brother Immo. Big brother Immo. Immerse nodded. Happy, you can speak now. She nodded happily. She was happy to have Immerse. With great difficulty he said, Happy. Very happy. Immerse couldn't help but have tears in his eyes. After a long time the two of them finally let go of each other. Immerse immediately dismissed the idea of going to the 20th hunting island. He wanted to teach Happy how to speak in this world. He had never spoken before. Now that he had the ability to speak, he had to practice it slowly. Hence for the next 5 days Immerse and Happy stayed in Micro-world. The two of them spoke one after another. Usually Immerse would say something and Happy would follow suit. Until the right words are said. 5 days later Happy no longer had any problems in saying some simple sentences. Immerse said to Happy, My world is called Micro-world. It's equivalent to a world independent of the universe. In this world your brother Immo is a god. In this world I can make you speak. But in the outside world you still can't speak. Happy shook his head. Brother Immo, I'm already very satisfied to be able to speak here. You don't have to worry about me anymore. Immerse nodded gently and pulled Happy over. He said, What I mean is we can stay here often in the future. If you have anything to say to me you can say it here. Happy nodded and said, Yes brother Immo, I understand. After a while Happy suddenly thought of something. Brother Immo, you can make me speak here. Can you make Sister Emma's son regain his normal intelligence? Immerse nodded. I can, but it's only limited to this world. Happy nodded and said, That's great. Even if it's only in this world, Sister Emma will be very happy. Hence Happy returned to the real world and found Emma. He gestured with sign language. Sister Emma, you should know that Brother Immo has a miniature world. Emma nodded. I know, it's very beautiful. I really want to live there forever. Happy smiled and gestured. In that world Brother Immo can make me speak. Emma was stunned, then she said happily, Really? That's great. Let's go now. Let me see how you speak. Happy nodded and gestured again. And in that world, Brother Immo can make your son regain the intelligence of a normal human. Hearing this, Emma was stunned again. Then her heart burned. Really? Let's go now. She followed Emma and her son to Immerse's room. Immerse naturally knew about it. With a thought, the 4 of them entered the miniature world. When they appeared on the grass beside the lake, Emma looked at the dragons and phoenixes flying in the sky. Then she looked at the various koi fish swimming in the water. Then she looked at the huge waterfall that seemed to be hanging upside down from the heavenly palace. She couldn't help but be slightly stunned. Compared to the last time he was here, this place had undergone earth-shattering changes. But soon her attention shifted from the changes in the environment to her son. She sized up her son carefully, then asked Immerse, Boss, Just as she said this, her son suddenly said, Mom? When Emma heard this word, her whole body trembled. She turned to look at her son, tears welling up in her eyes. How many years had it been since she heard her son call her mom? She didn't even have any hope of hearing her son call her mom again in her lifetime. She didn't expect that her son would be able to call her mom again. When her son saw Emma's tears, he wiped them away with his hand. Mom, I'm fine. You don't have to worry. Emma's tears welled up again. She hugged her son. This was the scene that he had been yearning for day and night. When Happy saw this, a happy smile appeared on his face. After a long time, Emma let go of her son, turned around and said to Immorse, "Boss, thank you." Immorse nodded slightly and said, "I always feel a bit awkward when I hear the word boss coming out of your mouth. Just call me brother." Emma nodded and said, "Brother Immo, thank you." Then she bowed deeply to Immorse with her son. She was grateful to Immorse from the bottom of her heart. Happy, who was beside her, said, "Your son can only regain the intelligence of a normal person in this world, but in the outside world." Chapter 461. Happy said softly, "Sister Emma, your son can only be like this in this world. Back in the real world." She did not have the heart to finish her sentence. She felt that it was very cruel to say such words to a mother. However, Emma shook her head. "It's okay. I'm already very satisfied to be like this here." Speaking of this, she looked at Happy in surprise. "This is the first time I've heard you speak. I didn't expect your voice to be so nice." Happy smiled shyly and said, "Sister Emma, you're making me a little embarrassed." Immorse said, "If you like living here, you can stay here for a long time." Emma quickly nodded. "Thank you, OL. Brother Immo." Emma's son was also very sensible. "Thank you." Immorse shook his head. "No need to add, elder." Since Happy and Emma liked to stay here, Immorse decided to bring the three of them with him when he went out this time. At the very least, he would be able to eat a hot meal every time he brought them along. Moreover, there would be people to talk to when he was bored. After settling them down, Immorse set off for the 20th hunting island. Now he needed 1 million kill points to level up. Currently, he only had a little over 236,000 kill points. His goal for this trip to the 20th hunting ground was to obtain as many kill points as possible. Before he set off, he had done some research. In the 20th hunting ground, there were two types of creatures that were the most terrifying. One was the ghouls that mutated from humans after they were infected with the virus. The other was the mutated snakes. In the 20th hunting ground, normal humans only occupied 1/5 of the space. Ghouls and mutated snakes occupied the other 4/5 of the space. Ghouls lived on the rotting corpses of humans. Of course, they did not only eat rotting flesh and did not kill living humans. They would kill living humans and wait for them to rot before eating them. Moreover, these ghouls were very smart. They would not take the initiative to attack humans. Instead, they would often take advantage of the situation when humans were cornered by the mutated snakes. The strength of these snakes and ghouls was equivalent to that of a level 10 desolate hunter. It could be said that they were not a threat to Immorse at all. Moreover, the number of ghouls and snakes was very large. Immorse could easily kill a large number of them. Therefore, to ordinary desolate hunters, the 20th hunting ground, which was known as a forbidden zone, was the best place for Immorse to obtain kill points. The 20th hunting island was relatively far away. It took Immorse 2 days to reach the 20th hunting island. When they arrived at the business hall of hunting island number 20, Immorse probed with his dragon mind. He discovered that the people who came to the 20th hunting island were basically all rank 10 desolate hunters. Clearly, they were here to break through to the Grand Desolate Master level. However, as the 20th hunting ground was extremely dangerous, most of them came in groups. In groups of 3 to 5, each group was made up of level 10 Grand Desolate Masters from the same sect. The sects that could come here were basically the top sects in the entire Flaming Dawn continent. In addition to the business hall, there were also living areas, leisure areas, entertainment areas, and other areas on the 20th hunting island. In these areas there were quite a few rank 10 hunters. Immorse probed with his dragon mind and found that many of the desolate hunters were talking about the annihilation of the dragon clan. I wonder which super expert annihilated the dragon clan. It has been so many days and there is no clue at all. Didn't anyone check it out? Are you kidding? To be able to annihilate the Dragon Clan, his strength is definitely at the top of the Flaming Dawn continent. Who would dare to investigate? Are they looking for death? That's true. If I had such strength, who would dare to get in my way? I would just annihilate them. The few people who were talking all had yearning expressions. Of course, there were also people who reminded him. The continent is not very peaceful recently. Everyone better behave on the continent. Yeah, if that super expert doesn't like it, it will be over. We have been very careful recently. As the second most powerful sect on the continent, the sect master has given a strict order that no disciple is allowed to provoke any person from any sect. Violators will be killed on the spot. Damn, isn't your sect too strict? So we have no choice. The number one faction, the Dragon Clan, has been annihilated. As the number two faction, we are also very scared. As they spoke, a trace of fear appeared on their faces. Hearing these words, Immorse could not help but touch his chin. Am I that scary? Next, it was Immorse's turn to line up to buy a ticket. When Immorse went to the other hunting islands for the first time, he was afraid of exposing his identity, so he asked the little monk to get a ticket for him online. Now Immorse's strength could be said to be among the top of the Flaming Dawn continent. Naturally, he did not need to be afraid of exposing his identity. If he really exposed his identity, it would be these people who should be afraid. There were actually quite a lot of people going to the 20th hunting ground. After all, many people were stuck at rank 10. If they could break through to the Grand Desolate Master level, not only would their strength reach the level of a first-rate expert, but their lifespan would also be extended to 1,000 years. Naturally, all the Desolate Hunters who had hopes of breaking through to the Grand Desolate Master level would come to try. Immorse did not go to the self-service ticket vending machine to buy a ticket. This was because the automatic ticket vending machine only had one ticket per person. There were not many people lining up at the ticket window, so Immorse quickly arrived at the window. The beautiful ticket sales girl at the window had a professional smile on her face as she asked, "Hello, may I know how many people are there?" Immorse replied, "One person." The ticket sales girl nodded with a smile and said, "One ticket." Immorse smiled and shook his head. "No, I want to book a ticket for a year." The ticket sales girl was speechless. She was stunned. She had been selling tickets here for 3 years. She often saw experts who went to the 20th hunting ground for a month and came back without resting. They would buy another ticket and enter the 20th hunting ground again. However, she had never heard of someone who could book a ticket for a year. When the surrounding people saw this, although they did not say anything, they were laughing in their hearts. Could this be a country bumpkin from somewhere? Did he know how expensive the tickets were? One ticket cost 2 million. If he bought a ticket for a year, wouldn't it cost 24 million? Was he crazy? Moreover, money was secondary. The most important thing was that the 20th hunting ground was extremely dangerous for desolate hunters. There was a saying in the story, "Towering giant python." This showed how terrifying the mutated snakes were. Not to mention the ghouls, whose intelligence was about the same as humans. One had to be on tenterhooks after going there for a month. One had to be in a tense state at all times. Therefore, many people would have to rest for a long time after going there for a month. Now, this kid actually wanted to book a ticket for a year. Was he crazy? Chapter 462. The pretty ticket seller was stunned when she heard Immorse say it was for a year. But with her professionalism, she quickly regained her professional smile. She said, "Sir, I have to remind you that the 20th hunting ground is very dangerous. According to the rules of our hunting island, each person can only buy one ticket. After a month, you have to come back and rest for a few days." Immorse shook his head. "No need. I'm in a hurry." The pretty ticket seller continued. "Each ticket costs 2 million, so you'll need 24 million a year. I suggest you, no need. Here's a check for 30 million from Xianxia Bank. You can withdraw cash from any bank." As Immorse spoke, he took out a check. He already knew that these people would make excuses. So it was more practical to pay directly. The surrounding people who had been secretly laughing just now all widened their eyes at this moment. Damn, 30 million just like that. Whose rich kid is this? His family has a mine, right? In fact, they were right. Immorse did have a mine on Hunting Island number 1. But his money did not come from the crystal source veins. It was what he got after he inherited Hunting Island number 1. And this was only a small part of all his assets. After he destroyed the Skygold Trisect and the Dragon Clan, he also got a large amount of electronic currency. Although these electronic currencies needed to be verified before they could be used, it was not difficult for the little monk to crack them. So now Immorse was definitely one of the richest people on the continent. Even Immorse himself did not know how much wealth he had now. Seeing this, the female ticket seller's beautiful eyes showed a hint of surprise. But she was still very professional. She regained her smile. She said politely, "Sir, I can't make the decision on this matter. Please wait in the VIP room for a while. I'll get the manager." Immorse nodded. Then he turned around and walked toward the VIP room. Seeing this, the people around all shook their heads helplessly. You can really do whatever you want with money. What rules? What rules? They're nothing in front of money. What can we do? If you have money, you can too. When Immorse arrived at the VIP lounge, someone had already brewed a cup of high-quality black tea. Before Immorse could savor it, the manager had already walked in. This was a middle-aged man in his 40s. He was plump and looked simple and honest. As soon as he came in, his face was full of smiles. "Honorable sir, what is your name?" Immorse said, Mr. Mo, we are honored to have you on our hunting island 20. Please have a seat. This is the best longer tea. Please have a taste." Immorse nodded. This manager looked simple and honest. Actually, it was very slippery. However, Immorse did not intend to have too much to do with him. He directly slapped out a check. 30 million for a year. The manager looked at the check in front of him with a smile. "Mr. Mo, you're so cool." The 20th hunting island has always been very straightforward with people who like to be straightforward. Sure. Immorse nodded. "It's good. Let's go now." The manager was slightly stunned. He didn't expect Immorse to be so direct and efficient at handling matters at such a young age, without the slightest hesitation. He quickly nodded. "Of course. I'll prepare the VIP channel for you. Everyone else will be temporarily suspended. Only you will be teleported." This was a little too high profile. However, there were still many people who needed to be teleported. If Immorse followed the normal procedure, it would probably take more than an hour. Therefore, Immorse nodded and said, "Okay." The manager said, "Mr. Mo, please come with me." Then he led Immorse to the teleportation hall. When the people around saw that the manager of the 20th hunting island was personally escorting this guest, they all looked at each other. Sure enough, with money, even if you asked a ghost to grind it, the ghost would definitely agree. The plump manager turned back and asked while walking, "Mr. Mo, the 20th hunting island is very dangerous. Do you need us to send 2 grand desolate masters to accompany you?" Immorse shook his head. "No need." "Well, okay." While talking, the two arrived at the teleportation hall. The manager had already informed the people in front of the teleportation hall to temporarily suspend the teleportation. Of course, these people were basically disciples of the major sects on the continent. They could not be offended. Therefore, there was compensation for them. Each of them would be given a refund of 100,000 for the entrance fee. Most of these disciples were happy to have their money refunded. Although they were disciples of the major sects, their money did not grow on trees. How could they not be happy that they could save 100,000 yuan by waiting a little longer? Of course, there were also disciples of the major sects who did not lack money. Their faces were full of embarrassment. However, before they left, the elders in their sects had warned them that it was a critical time and they should not cause any trouble. Therefore, they could only endure it for the time being. After Immorse arrived at the teleportation hall, the teleportation was soon activated. He turned into a blue and white ball of light and disappeared from the teleportation hall under the envious and jealous gazes of the others. The manager secretly used his multifunctional watch to check the authenticity of the 30 million yuan check. In the end, he nodded in satisfaction. Then he smiled at the crowd and said, "Everyone, I'm really sorry. The guest just now had some urgent matters to attend to. I'm sorry for wasting everyone's time. When you come back from the 20th hunting ground in a month, your expenses will be waived for the next 3 days." Hearing that, everyone clapped and cheered. Although they did not care about the money, it was naturally good to spend less. Chapter 463. The owner of the 20th hunting island was puzzled. How could the turnover have doubled all of a sudden? The plump manager replied, "It's a VIP 30 million for a year." The owner of the 20th hunting island was slightly surprised. "Who is it?" The plump manager replied, "A VIP with the surname Mo." The owner asked again, "Which faction does Chong belong to?" The plump manager shook his head. "I haven't had the time to check." The owner thought for a moment and said, "Check, but don't make too much noise. We have to be careful with such a person." The plump manager nodded. "Understood." With the power of the 20th hunting island, it didn't take too long to check a person's information. In just a few minutes, the information about Immerse had been sent to the plump manager's multifunction watch. He quickly opened the information and read it to the owner. Immerse, the new owner of the first hunting island. He slaughtered the entire 10th hunting island alone. He killed a member of the dragon clan in seconds and is suspected to have slaughtered the strongest sects in the 16 prefectures, the Heavenly Gold, Heavenly Wood and Heavenly Water sects. The plump manager's voice became lower and lower as he read. Finally he stopped. The owner's eyes widened. Some time ago he heard that the 10th hunting island had been slaughtered, and it was by a single person. He didn't expect it to be this young man. According to the information, the 10th hunting island had invited no less than 100 hunters. This young man had killed so many desolate hunters by himself. Just how strong was he? The most shocking thing was that he killed a member of the dragon clan in seconds even though he knew that there was a member of the dragon clan present. One had to know that the dragon clan was the strongest faction in the entire Flaming Land back then. He dared to slaughter the dragon clan in front of so many people. This matter was definitely not simple. A few days ago the entire dragon clan had been slaughtered. Thinking of this, the owner seemed to have discovered a huge secret. This young man with the surname Mo was very likely to be a super expert who had slaughtered the entire dragon clan. Although this sounded ridiculous, nothing was impossible on the Flaming Dawn continent. Moreover, even if he wasn't the one who had slaughtered the dragon clan, the fact that he dared to kill a member of the dragon clan in seconds on the 10th hunting island was enough to prove that he was somehow related to the super expert who had slaughtered the entire dragon clan. Thinking of this, the island master asked the fat manager, "When you received this Mo? Island master, just now you didn't neglect anything, right?" Although he knew that the fat manager always did things flawlessly, he was still very confident in manager Mo. However, this was a matter of great importance, so he had to confirm it again. The fat manager shook his head repeatedly. "Island master, don't worry. I've always been very polite to any guest. Let alone this distinguished guest." After saying that, the fat manager's forehead was already covered in sweat. Although he had done a perfect job just now, he was dealing with a young man who was related to the dragon clan, the #1 force on the continent. If there was even the slightest negligence, just thinking about it made him scared. The fat manager wiped the sweat off his forehead without leaving a trace and asked, "Island Lord, should we remind the other people on the island to be careful when they meet Island Lord Mo?" The island master thought for a moment and shook his head. "That's not necessary. If there are too many traces of our involvement in this matter, I'm afraid it will arouse his displeasure. Let nature take its course." If an ordinary person heard the words "let nature take its course," they would probably be a little dumbfounded. What did it mean to let nature take its course? But who was the fat manager? Reading people's minds was his forte. He quickly understood the island master's meaning. In the face of such a powerful existence, anything one did would be in vain. It was better to let nature take its course. As long as one was careful and did not provoke him. As for the others, they could do whatever they wanted. At this moment, Immerse had already arrived at the 20th hunting ground. The 20th hunting ground was called the Hell Python Planet. It got its name because there were many kinds of terrifying pythons on the planet. Generally speaking, the creator was fair. Poisonous snakes were not big in size. And the big pythons were basically not poisonous. However, on this planet, due to the deliberate control of the 20th hunting ground, the bigger the python, the more poisonous it was. Take the tax room as an example. The strongest python on this planet was a level 10 mutated wild beast, which was equivalent to a level 10 desolate hunter. However, due to the existence of extremely powerful toxins, their strength was far stronger than a level 10 desolate hunter. Therefore, even a level 10 desolate hunter could only retreat in the face of such a python. At this time, Immerse was at the teleportation coordinates. These coordinates were not built in the wilderness. The Hell Python planet was too dangerous. Therefore the 3 coordinates were all in 3 bases. These 3 bases were specially built on the 20th hunting ground. Around the bases there were energy shields for defense. And there were all kinds of thermal weapons and super weapons for defense. Once those pythons and ghouls tried to attack the bases, they would be blasted into pieces by these thermal weapons. Of course, after so many years these pythons and ghouls had learned to be smart. They would not attack these bases rashly. However, once someone came out of the bases, they would use all kinds of methods to kill them. The people who came here for training had not reached the level of a Grand Desolate Master. Therefore their various abilities were not too outstanding. And those who had reached the level of a Grand Desolate Master would have made great progress in various aspects of their body. Speed, strength, explosive force, agility and other aspects would be greatly improved. Therefore it was not too dangerous for a Grand Desolate Master to go to the 21st or 22nd hunting ground. On the contrary, the 20th hunting ground was the most dangerous one. The annual mortality rate was among the top 30 hunting grounds. When Immerse walked out of the teleportation coordinates, a middle-aged woman immediately came up to him. Although she looked middle-aged on the surface, she did not make people feel that she was old at all. On the contrary, she made people feel that she was more feminine. Every move of hers could stir a man's heart. She had a friendly smile on her face and said to Immerse, "Mr. Ma, welcome, welcome." Immerse plundered her memory and checked it. It turned out that she was also a staff member of the 20th hunting ground. She received a message from the manager telling her to carry out her orders well. Immerse nodded. The woman introduced herself. "My name is Wei. People here call me Sister Wei. Mr. Mo, you can call me by my name." Immerse looked at this woman. She was not so charming nor so vulgar. But even if she flipped her long hair, it would make a man's heart beat. Of course, compared to Happiness she was not so beautiful and pure. Compared to Maya her figure was not so hot. Therefore Immerse did not say much. He just nodded. "You are older than me. I'll call you Sister Wei." And Wei saw that Immerse was not surprised by her appearance and was a little surprised. At the same time she clutched her chest. "Mr. Mo's words are a little hurtful." Chapter 464. Immerse was welcomed into the first base by Wei. The 3 bases on the Infernal Python Star had the best defensive facilities and living facilities in the Flaming Origin continent. The rank 10 Desolate Hunters who came to the Infernal Python Star to train would usually stay in the base. If they wanted to train they would leave the base to hunt desolate beasts. And Wei brought Immerse all the way into the living area. They then passed through the entertainment hall. Along the way many people came to greet Wei. "Hello, Sister Wei." "Oh, Sister Wei, is this your brother?" "Sister Wei, are you free to have dinner with us tonight?" And Wei also warmly returned their greetings. However, although she was also very warm to others, she seemed very approachable. In fact, everyone knew that Wei was a woman who was very difficult to win over. Firstly, her strength had reached the level of a grand hunter. She looked down on these desolate hunters. Secondly, in this base she was the absolute leader. Regardless of strength or status, she was higher than these desolate hunters who came out to train. If these people wanted to pursue her, it would naturally be very difficult. However, when Wei spoke to Immerse, that kind of feeling made people feel very intimate. "Mr. Mo, this way please." And Wei's face was brimming with a charming smile. Immerse nodded and followed her out of the entertainment hall. Everyone in the hall looked at the back of the 2 people as they left and started to discuss in low voices. "Who exactly is that kid? Is he Sister Wei's gigolo? Looking at that kid's appearance I feel unhappy. Are you jealous? Ah, aren't you jealous?" Saying this seemed to poke at the sore spot of every man present. "Damn, I just haven't reached the level of a Grand Desolate Master. If I had reached the level of a Grand Desolate Master I would definitely pursue Sister Wei." Who wouldn't? Soon, Wei brought Immerse to a standalone room that looked like a villa. She introduced with a charming smile. "This is a standalone villa that our base specially uses to entertain VIPs. Mr. Mo, you can rest assured that no one will disturb you here. If you need anything there's a pager here. I will arrange for people to be on standby 24 hours a day." Immerse didn't act coquettishly. He nodded and said, "Thank you, Sister Wei." And Wei shook her head. "You're our honored guest and this is something we ought to do." Immorse thought for a moment before saying, "Sister Wei, which part of the infernal python star has the most ghouls and snakes? It would be best if they are at the desolate hunter level." Sister Wei said, "The place with the most ghouls is the ghoul swamp." However, in terms of numbers they were still no match for the Yama forest. There were many snakes there. In the Yama forest there was a snake valley. It was a kingdom of snakes. Every snake had reached the level of a mutated desolate beast. They are equivalent to desolate hunters. Hearing this, Immorse was secretly delighted. Then he said to Sister Wei, "Okay, I understand." Sister Wei asked, "What's the matter? Is Mr. Imo thinking of going there? It's too dangerous there. I suggest that Mr. Imo doesn't go there." Immorse said, "Well, thanks for the reminder. However, I have something important to do, so I have to go there." And Wei said, "If Mr. Imo insists on going, I can send a few people to go with you. Or I can accompany you personally. That's the safest way." Immorse shook his head. "There's no need." Hearing Immorse's words, and Wei did not insist. She only said, "Mr. Imo, you have to be careful. You have to prepare enough life-saving items." Immorse nodded. And Wei saw that Immorse had no intention of continuing the conversation, but she tactfully said, "Mr. Imo, you should rest early." "Then you should rest early, Mr. Imo. If you need anything, just press the call button and we'll get it done for you immediately." Immorse nodded again. "Okay." And Wei left the room and returned to her office a few minutes later. After thinking for a moment, she called the island master. "Island master, Mr. Imo wants to go to the Yama forest and even Snake Island." The island master was silent for a moment before asking, "Why is he going there?" And Wei shook her head. "I don't know either. However, that place is extremely dangerous. Even a grand desolate master has to be extremely careful. Mr. Imo might be in danger if he goes alone. I plan to send a few people to protect him, but he said there's no need. So, should we send someone to protect him in secret?" The island master pondered for a moment before replying. "He might be related to the person who slaughtered the dragon clan. He might be the person who slaughtered the dragon clan. Since he said there's no problem, we don't have to worry. If we interfere too much, we might arouse his displeasure." And Wei nodded when she heard this. "Understood, Isle Master." After ending the call, and Wei recalled the island master's words and could not help but be shocked. That young man might be the person who slaughtered the dragon clan? The psychological impact of this news was too great. She needed some time to digest it. The next morning, Immorse slept until 11 o'clock before waking up. After he finished washing up, he pressed the beeper. "Bring me breakfast." The other side immediately responded, "Yes, Mr. Imo." In less than a minute, 2 attendants had already walked in with a food delivery cart. The breakfast was very sumptuous, enough for 5 people. Immorse naturally did not stand on ceremony. He had spent 30 million for a year, so it was natural for them to prepare a sumptuous breakfast for him. As for Happy and Emma, Missouri sure did not let them come out. In the miniature world, Immorse had already prepared a lot of ingredients for them so they could make it themselves. After finishing breakfast, Immorse flapped his wings and left the base. Those who saw Immorse leave were all slightly surprised. This guy is so arrogant. He actually went outside the base alone on this hell python star. He's not arrogant, he's just an idiot. He thinks he's very powerful, but he doesn't understand how terrifying this hell python star is. I say in less than 10 minutes, this guy will either be scared back or die outside. It's best if he dies outside. While they were discussing, a few inconspicuous middle-aged men were sitting in the corner of the restaurant. One of them said, "This is the only reason we came to the hell python star this time. Other than that, don't cause any more trouble." The others nodded. "Understood." That person continued, "There are many snake-type desolate beasts in the Yama forest. Everyone must be careful. Especially in the Snake Valley, it's extremely dangerous. So everyone must take protective measures. In short, now that the Dragon Clan has been destroyed, it's time for us to welcome the Phoenix Master back." When the others heard this, their eyes flashed with fanaticism as they said in low voices, "Welcome back the Phoenix Master. Dominate the continent." Welcome back the Phoenix Master. Dominate the continent. Welcome back the Phoenix Master. Dominate the continent. Chapter 465. Infernal Python Planet Base Number 1 in the corner of the restaurant. A few people in ordinary clothes who didn't seem to attract any attention said in a low voice. Welcome back Phoenix Master. Dominate the continent. Welcome back Phoenix Master. Dominate the continent. Welcome back Phoenix Master. Dominate the continent. The leader said, have the other brothers arrived? We've divided into 5 groups. The first 3 groups have already set off for Yama Jungle. The other 2 groups have already arrived at Hunting Island 20. They'll be here soon. The leader nodded. Okay, let's go to Yama Jungle after we finish our meal. Yes. Immorse didn't use teleportation after leaving the base. It was his first time here and he wanted to see what kind of world this was. After flying at subsonic speed for about 10 minutes, a shadow suddenly shot up from the forest below at an extremely fast speed. Fortunately, Immorse's dragons will happen to scan the area below and caught the shadow instantly. He leaned to the side. Whoosh, that black shadow almost brushed past Immorse's chest as it flew past. At this time, Immorse already knew what the black shadow was. It was a feather more than a meter long. And the feather had energy attached to it. After Immorse dodged the feather, it flew up for about 2 kilometers before falling to the ground. When it landed, it actually nailed deeply into a huge rock that was about the height of a person on the ground with a cracking sound. Only the feathered tail of more than a foot long was left outside. Immorse's dragons will immediately swept down. He found that it was a bird-type wild beast that attacked him. This bird-type wild beast was about 30 meters long and 15 meters wide. Its feathers were black. Only the hair on the top of its head was white. Immorse checked its level frowny face species. White-headed arrow eagle, level 3 mutant wild beast. Immorse was a little puzzled. This kind of thing could actually attack humans. The strangest thing was that it could shoot its feathers out like arrows. At this time the white-headed arrow eagle saw that its attack missed and didn't continue fighting. It turned around, flapped its wings and flew southeast. Immorse sneered, do you think you can just leave after attacking me? At the thought of this, his dragon will moved and blasted towards the white-headed arrow condor. Bang! The white-headed arrow eagle instantly exploded into a bloody mist. Immorse shook his head and ignored him, continuing to fly forward. However, after flying for about 2 minutes, another white-headed arrow eagle appeared in front of him. This time the white-headed arrow eagle didn't shoot any feathers at him. Instead it flapped its wings and kept squeaking. Immorse stopped. This white-headed arrow eagle seemed to have something on its mind. What's the matter with a bird looking for me? Puzzled, he used his mind to plunder the white-headed arrow condor's memories. After looking through its memories, Immorse finally understood what was going on. It turned out that the white-headed arrow eagle had a nest nearby. And now, a large number of ghouls were invading their lair. The adult white-headed arrow eagles had all fled. However, it was their breeding season and there were many fledglings in their nests that had not yet learned how to fly. The adult white-headed arrow eagles could only return and fight with the ghouls. However, in terms of intelligence, these white-headed arrow eagles were far inferior to the ghouls. The white-headed arrow eagles suffered heavy casualties. As a result, these white-headed arrow eagles had no choice but to ask for help. Of course, under normal circumstances, they wouldn't ask for help from humans. However, they were helpless at this moment. Previously, the white-headed arrow eagle wanted to stop Immorse. However, they didn't know how to speak human language, so they could only use their feathers to shoot at Immorse. Then they deliberately led him in the direction of the white-headed arrow eagle's nest. However, they didn't expect that this human didn't chase after them at all. Instead, he directly used his mind power to crush the white-headed arrow eagle's body. The other white-headed arrow eagles also witnessed this. This gave them a glimmer of hope. This human was so powerful he should be able to chase away those ghouls. That was why this white-headed arrow eagle risked its life to block in front of Immorse. If Immorse killed this white-headed arrow eagle, there would be a 3rd, 4th and 10th white-headed arrow eagle blocking his path. Although they didn't speak the same language, they believed that through this series of strange actions, This human should understand that they must have something special to ask of him. They were very lucky that Immorse had the memory plunder skill. Otherwise, they might really have to sacrifice themselves one by one. They didn't know how many sacrifices they had to make before Immorse understood their intentions. At the same time, Immorse felt slightly apologetic. Just now, the white-headed arrow eagle had come to ask for help. In the end, he didn't understand what it meant and directly killed it. Immorse thought for a moment and used his mind to communicate with the white-headed arrow eagle. Let's go and save your children. The white-headed arrow eagle 100 meters away was originally in despair. It was certain that this human would definitely not understand what it meant. They had to continuously block this human to make him understand. Therefore it was used as cannon fodder. However, at this moment, a thought suddenly appeared in its mind, giving it a fright. It almost forgot to flap its wings. Immorse used his mind to communicate with it. Why are you still in a daze? If you wait any longer, I'm afraid your children will all die. As he spoke, he had already flapped his wings and flew in the direction of the white-headed arrow eagle's nest. The white-headed arrow eagle was stunned again. How did this human know the direction of their nest? However, at this moment it didn't care about these things. It had to solve this crisis first. Then the man and the bird quickly flew toward the cliff 50 kilometers away. At this moment, at the cliff 50 kilometers away. The cliff here was like the pages of a book, layer by layer. Many huge nests were built on each layer. This kind of terrain could not only shelter them from the wind and rain, but it was also very suitable for the fledglings to fly for the first time. Therefore, this was a very ideal place for the white-headed arrow eagles to build their nests. Therefore, every year during the breeding season, there would be thousands of white-headed arrow eagles to build their nests here. However, at this moment on these 1,000-layer cliffs, there were ghouls crawling everywhere. They constantly climbed into these nests and twisted the necks of these white-headed arrow eagle fledglings. As for those adult white-headed arrow eagles, they constantly shot out feathers. Those ghouls were very agile. Most of them were able to dodge these feathers that were shot out. Only a very small portion of them would be hit by these feathers. However, these ghouls were like zombies. Even if they were hit by the feathers, as long as their heads weren't hit, they could still move freely. Moreover, many ghouls actually knew how to use bows and arrows. And their bows and arrows were imbued with the energy in their bodies, which would cause serious damage to these white-headed arrow eagles. Just like this, both sides continued to fight with arrows. However, relatively speaking, the ghouls' intelligence was equivalent to that of humans. Therefore, the white-headed arrow eagles with lower intelligence were completely suppressed. Chapter 466. At this moment, the battle on the 1,000-level cliff had reached its climax. Of course, this was just a nicer way of putting it. To put it bluntly, it was actually a one-sided massacre of the white-headed arrow eagles by the ghouls. As long as the white-headed arrow eagles didn't hit the ghouls' heads, these ghouls could quickly recover in a short period of time. On the other hand, the arrows of these ghouls didn't all have energy, but also corpse poison. The energy was used to break through the defense, and as long as the corpse poison touched a little, it would turn into rotten flesh in a short period of time. When the white-headed arrow eagles were in the air, they only relied on a pair of wings, so they naturally weren't that agile in dodging. Therefore, at this moment, 600 to 700 white-headed arrow eagles had already been killed. Immorse had already flown to the top of the cliff. With a sweep of his dragon's consciousness, he discovered that there were more than 30,000 ghouls on the cliff below. These ghouls looked a little like humans, but their skin was gray. Each of them was very thin, almost like skin wrapped around bones. The eyeballs on their faces were very large, almost occupying a third of their faces. Each ghoul was basically a level 4 desolate hunter. At this moment, some ghouls pulled the white-headed arrow eagle's chicks out of the nest and opened their mouths to bite. Some ghouls used long vines to pierce through the bodies of the white-headed arrow eagle's chicks one after another, as if they were wearing a long stick of candied haws. Some of the white-headed arrow eagle's eggs that hadn't hatched yet were knocked open by the ghouls from the outside. Then they sucked the juice inside from this hole. The white-headed arrow eagle that brought Immorse back screamed miserably when it saw this miserable situation. The rest of the white-headed arrow eagles saw that the reinforcements were only one person and a human at that. Their hearts were filled with despair. Humans had always been at odds with desolate beasts like them. Basically, when they met, they would kill the other party. This time they actually brought back a human reinforcements. This was simply too stupid. Immorse didn't care about what these white-headed arrow eagles were thinking. He only wanted to collect kill points now. However, he had always been a person who would test the situation before doing anything. Therefore, he didn't directly make a move. Instead, he plundered the memories of a ghoul and checked them. He discovered that in addition to the 30,000 ghouls here, there were also a large number of ghouls in the will-o-wisp swamp not far away. Immorse couldn't help but feel happy in his heart. Then the dragon's will swept across the area. A ghoul that had just caught the white-headed arrow eagle exploded into a bloody mist with a bang. This gave the ghoul beside him a fright. But the ghoul hadn't reacted yet. Bang. He also exploded into a cloud of blood mist. Bang 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 bang. The ghouls exploded one after another. Above the 1,000-layer broken cliff, blood mist suddenly rose. The ghouls were scared stiff by this sudden and bizarre scene. When they saw their fellow clansmen exploding one after another, their hearts were filled with fear. They no longer dared to stop. They either fled in all directions or hid. However, these were of no use in front of Immorse's dragon will. Some were hiding behind trees. Bang. Some of them were hiding in caves. Bang. How many of them managed to escape more than 1,000 meters away? Bang. How many managed to escape more than 10,000 meters away? Bang. Some even jumped into the river below the cliff, hiding deep in the mud. Bang. A blood-red wave burst out of the river. All of this took a long time to describe, but in fact it happened in a short 10 seconds. The bodies of the ghouls, without exception, all exploded into a cloud of blood mist. More than 30,000 ghouls caused Immorse's kill points to soar by 30,000. This was also something that happened in a short 10 seconds. Seeing the kill points in his mind soar, this feeling of exploding made Immorse's heart beat faster. At this time his kill points had already reached 264338. As long as he went to the will-o-wisp swamp and killed the remaining 100,000 or so ghouls, he would be able to increase his kill points by another 100,000 or so. At this time the white-headed arrow eagle's followers, who had been in despair, were stunned for a moment when they saw the scene in front of them. After coming back to their senses, they immediately became excited. The frequency of flapping their wings was much faster than before. They were saved. Their children were saved. And the person who saved them and their children was actually a human. This was really unbelievable to them. One had to know that when they met humans in the past, they either avoided each other from afar or fought a bloody battle. Who would have thought that one day, a human would actually save them from the danger of extinction? This time they had sent out more than 100 of their kind to ask for help. Basically, these same kind of people had all gone to ask for help from other mutated desolate beasts. But these same kind of people either went and did not return, or they returned in failure. But they did not expect that in the end. It was actually these same kind of people who usually looked a little stupid who found this human and saved their entire race. This was really out of their expectations. However, while these white-headed arrow eagles were surprised and grateful, Immorse was considering whether to kill these white-headed arrow eagles as well. After all, this was also a few hundred kill points. However, after thinking for a moment, Immorse still gave up on this plan. If there was really no other way to obtain kill points, he would naturally kill these white-headed arrow eagles. But now, on this planet, there was a large amount of kill points for him to extract. With such a small amount of kill points, let's forget about it for now. These adult white-headed arrow eagles returned to their nests one after another. After checking on the chicks, they flapped their wings and flew up. They lined up neatly in the sky. 1 in the first row, 2 in the second row, 3 in the third row. Then almost at the same time they chirped, "Ah!" More than 300 white-headed arrow eagles whose bodies were more than 30 meters long chirped at the same time. The scene was quite spectacular. This was the highest form of etiquette for them to express their gratitude. But this spectacular scene, compared to the 6 adult white-headed arrow eagles' corpses and the hundreds of chicks' corpses on the ground, seemed a little tragic. Immorse knew from their memories that this was their etiquette. He nodded and did not say anything else. A pair of wings condensed from energy flapped and flew in the direction of the smoke and fire swamp. Behind him, more than 300 white-headed arrow eagles chirped at the same time. "Ah!" more than 10 minutes after Immerse left, in a nest in the middle of the 1,000-layer broken cliff. A small white-headed arrow eagle broke out of its shell. But its appearance was different from ordinary white-headed arrow eagles. On its head there was a feather sticking up high. When its parents saw this white-headed arrow eagle, they could not help but be stunned. Then they suddenly chirped at the sky, "Ah!" When the rest of the white-headed arrow eagles heard this chirp, they were all stunned. Then they hurriedly flew to this nest. When they saw this newly born white-headed arrow eagle, they all chirped at the sky just like its parents. "Ah!" Chapter 467. Immerse didn't know what was happening behind him, because he put all his attention on the will-o-wisp swamp in front of him. According to the memories of the previous ghoul, there were more than 100,000 ghouls in the will-o-wisp swamp. Although these ghouls were only equivalent to a level 4 desolate hunter. But after all, it was an unfamiliar place, so Immerse was still very careful. At this time the sun was setting in the west and the sky was gradually getting dark. In the dark swamp, faint green will-o-wisps had already appeared. This was very common in the will-o-wisp swamp. This was also the reason why the will-o-wisp swamp was so named. In the middle of the night, seeing these green will-o-wisps would make one's hair stand on end. But Immerse used his dragon's will to investigate and found out the truth of these will-o-wisps. It turned out that these were just the eyes of the ghouls. But the strange thing was that the eyes of the ghouls in other places didn't emit a faint green light at night. Only the ghouls in the will-o-wisp swamp would emit this faint green light at night. So there must be something strange about this. But for so many years, not many people went to the will-o-wisp swamp to investigate. In the past 1,000 years, there were a few desolate masters who went to investigate. However, most of them never returned. And the only desolate master who came back not only didn't find anything, but after he came back he slowly began to go crazy. He first began to believe in the existence of God. Then he said that everything in the world was under the control of God. Finally, he slowly began to become depressed. In the end, he ended his life by committing suicide. The owner of the 20th hunting island, as the owner of this planet, should have figured out the truth of the will-o-wisp swamp. But even the desolate masters couldn't return safely from the will-o-wisp swamp, so they naturally didn't dare to investigate. And as long as they didn't go to the will-o-wisp swamp, other places were actually very normal. So later, the 20th hunting island would give everyone who came to experience a special warning: don't go to the will-o-wisp swamp. Immerse was naturally told about this. But it was a bit unreasonable to leave so many kill points and not take them. And after evolving into a demonic dragon, the adventurous genes in his genes kept urging him to go to the will-o-wisp swamp. Immerse decided to go and take a look. Most importantly, he had the miniature world. When he encountered danger that he couldn't avoid, he would directly hide in the miniature world. If hiding for a day wasn't enough, then he would hide for a year. If 1 year was not enough, then he would hide for 10 years. No matter how strong the enemy was, they were still people of this universe. It was impossible for it to affect his miniature world. Soon Immerse entered the Ghostfire Swamp. The will-o-wisp swamp was extremely large. Although it was said that there were over 100,000 ghouls, they were actually spread out over 100,000 square kilometers of swamp. On average, there was only one ghoul per square kilometer. Immerse activated his dragon will and enveloped an area with a radius of 500 kilometers. The closer his dragon will was, the more powerful it would be. Therefore, although the dragon will could detect everything within a radius of 500 kilometers, the dragon will could not detect anything within a radius of 500 kilometers. However, if he wanted to use dragon telekinesis to kill an enemy, it would be best if he was within 100 kilometers. At this moment, in a circle with a radius of half a kilometer. Under the heavy pressure of Immerse's dragon will. Bang 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 bang. The ghouls exploded one after another. Bang 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 bang. The ghouls exploded and the ghost fire disappeared. In just 10 seconds, more than 300 ghouls exploded in a circular area with a radius of half a kilometer. Immerse also obtained more than 300 killing points. As he continued to fly forward, ghouls continued to explode. In his mind, killing points continued to enter his account. At the same time, Immerse already knew why so many people had left the Ghostfire Swamp and never returned. It turned out that there was corpse poison in the air of the ghost fire swamp. Generally speaking, corpse poison was like the zombie virus. It would not spread through the air. Only when one was scratched or bitten by the ghouls would they be infected. However, the corpse poison in the air here was extremely dense. If one accidentally inhaled it into their body, they would definitely be infected. It seemed that many people had died under this corpse poison. However, if that was all, it was still unable to kill the Grand Desolate Master. The Grand Desolate Master who had come to investigate also never returned. Obviously, there were other reasons for this. Immerse's flying speed was not fast. He maintained an altitude of 100 meters. While using his dragon will to explore a radius of 500 kilometers, he also killed the ghouls within a radius of 100 kilometers. After flying for about half an hour, 2 ghouls jumped out in front of him. These 2 ghouls were already equivalent to level 5 Desolate Hunters, 1 level higher than the other ghouls. However, this was of no help at all. Immerse first plundered their memories before killing them. While flipping through their memories, he continued to fly forward. From the memories of these 2 ghouls, Immerse did not know what was strange about this swamp. However, from their memories, Immerse could vaguely feel a mysterious and powerful force that was dominating the entire Ghostfire Swamp. He could even feel that there was a pair of eyes that had been watching the Ghostfire Swamp in the dark night. If it was in the past, Immerse might have left the Ghostfire Swamp. Safety was the most important thing. But now, with the adventurous nature of the bloodthirsty demon dragon in his body, coupled with the natural pride of the dragon race, this made him have no intention of leaving at all. You plan to dominate me? If you have the ability, bring it on. Continuing to fly forward, Immerse was still killing the ghouls here. Naturally, some ghouls saw Immerse and wanted to shoot Immerse down with arrows. However, before they could raise their arrows, they were already killed by Immerse. After flying for most of the night, he had killed about 20,000 ghouls. Immerse was also a little tired. With a thought, he hid in his own miniature world. When Happy and Emma saw Immerse arrive, they were very happy and asked about his well-being. Immerse said, "I'm a little tired. I want to rest." Happy and Emma quickly made a bed for Immerse. Immerse lay on the bed and heard the cries of dragons and phoenixes coming from the sky from time to time. Such sounds were a little disturbing to his sleep. With a thought, the sound of rain hitting banana leaves. Soon a dark cloud appeared in the sky. At the same time, banana leaves quickly grew out of the empty space next to his bedroom. Soon the banana leaf reached his window. Patter, patter, raindrops fell. A fragrant smell of earth came from outside the window. Listening to the sound of rain hitting banana leaves and smelling the fresh smell of earth. In a few minutes, Immerse's voice rang out. Happy and Emma heard the snoring coming from the bedroom and could not help but look at each other and laugh. Emma's child could not help but laugh when he heard Immerse's voice. His snoring is really loud. Chapter 468. Immerse fell asleep amidst the sound of rain pattering on banana leaves. He woke up amidst the rainbow that stretched across the sky. Such a world, such a life was really addictive. However, Immerse knew that life in this world was not real life after all. It was like playing a game. No matter how awesome one was in the game world, one still had to starve and be scolded in the real world. No matter how much this miniature world evolved, Immerse still had to constantly improve his strength in the real world. Although his sea dragon clone's strength was now considered a top-tier expert on the Flaming Origin continent. But this was not enough. Who knew if there were any hidden experts on the Flaming Origin continent? What Immerse wanted was to be able to crush the entire continent. Therefore he had to raise his strength to the Grand Desolate Master level. At that time, the sea dragon clone's strength would exceed the Grand Desolate Master level. Only then could it be called invincible on the entire continent. Thinking of this, Immerse once again bid farewell to Happy Emma and left the miniature world. When he came to the Ghostfire Swamp again, it was morning. It was equivalent to Immerse sleeping for more than 30 hours. The ghouls were not afraid of sunlight. Therefore they would still be active during the day. Immerse's draconic will probed. There were still many ghouls within a 500-kilometer radius. As for how terrifying the legendary Ghostfire Swamp was, he did not discover it. He continued to go deeper and deeper, at the same time using his spiritual will to kill these ghouls. Just like this, Immorse continued to use his draconic will to kill the ghouls. When his draconic will was about to be exhausted, he returned to the miniature world to rest. After his draconic will recovered, he came out again to kill the ghouls. Now that Immorse's draconic will had reached level 10, its recovery speed was very fast. Basically, it would be able to recover to its peak within 48 hours. It seemed that no matter how one looked at it, Immorse would be able to easily cross the Ghostfire Swamp. However, on this day when Immorse arrived at the center of the Ghostfire Swamp, he finally discovered something. The center of the Ghostfire Swamp, in terms of terrain, vegetation and other aspects, seemed to be no different from the rest of the Ghostfire Swamp. But when Immorse arrived, he realized that something was wrong. The direction of the wind here was uncertain. Sometimes it blew from the southeast, sometimes it blew from the northwest. From time to time there would be a tornado. Sometimes the wind even blew from the sky to the ground. Immorse had experienced so much, so he could be considered to be experienced and knowledgeable. However, he had never seen wind blowing from the sky to the ground. Immorse couldn't help but raise his guard. 5 minutes later, something strange happened. He saw an inverted cone-shaped tornado coming from afar. It was approaching at a high speed. The tornado swept up the turf and muddy water in the swamp. Wherever the tornado passed, it left a 100-meter wide and 1-meter deep gully in the swamp. Moments later, the tornado headed straight for Immorse. Immorse was already prepared to dodge. However, when the tornado was about 10 meters away from Immorse, it suddenly split into 4. It formed 4 tornadoes. The 4 tornadoes instantly spread out and surrounded Immorse from 4 directions. Immorse flapped his wings and passed through the side of the tornado at an extremely fast speed. However, just as he passed through, more than 10 tentacles stretched out from the tornado and grabbed at Immorse's feet. Fortunately, Immorse used his dragon sense to envelop the surroundings. When those tentacles reached over, Immorse had already dodged. The 4 tornadoes failed to encircle Immorse, so they merged back into one. Then they flew high into the sky. Moments later, from the sky, a huge tornado-shaped cover was formed and covered Immorse. At this moment, at the top of the tornado where it met the sky, it formed the shadow of a giant. This giant shadow seemed to be the shadow of a corpse ghost. It bared its fangs and brandished its claws, its face sinister. It seemed to want to eat Immorse alive. Especially the aura it released, it actually far exceeded that of a Grand Desolate Master. It gave people the feeling that it was in existence above the Grand Desolate Master. Moreover, this thing's body was still growing. At first it was only 500 meters tall, but soon it reached 1,000 meters. 5,000 meters, 10,000 meters, 50,000 meters. It gave people the feeling that it had reached the level of connecting the sky and the earth. Even the most powerful Grand Desolate Master among humans would lose the thought of resisting in front of such a huge corpse ghost, because it was too powerful. However, at this moment, Immorse's mind moved. He directly used teleportation. He instantly left the range of the giant corpse ghost. The corpse ghost seemed to be slightly surprised. It let out a beast-like voice. Teleportation? Then it mocked, "Do you think you're invincible just because you know a little triangular cat trick? Ignorant human, huh?" As it spoke, it stretched out its hands. "I'll let you see what the power of a god is." Just as he finished speaking, he saw the swamp in the distance start to surge rapidly. Just like a wave, it was rolling towards them. At first it was only 10 meters high. Gradually the wave also continued to rise. 20 meters, 50 meters, 100 meters. It was still rising. What was even more terrifying was that there were actually 4 such waves. They swept towards Immorse from 4 directions. In the sky, the corpse ghost that was far larger than a mountain enveloped Immorse. If it was an ordinary person, even a Grand Desolate Master, seeing this seemingly supernatural phenomenon, they would be scared to the point of being at a loss. In the flaming beginning continent, no matter how strong a Grand Desolate Master was, he could split open the ground and collapse mountains. It wouldn't cause too much shock. Because for a Grand Desolate Master this was a routine operation. And now, this giant corpse ghost actually caused a 100-meter tall wave of mud to surge in the swamp. This ability had far exceeded the ability of humans. It was normal for people to be afraid in front of such an ability. But Immorse didn't. This time not only did he not escape, but he also flew towards the giant corpse ghost in the sky. At the same time, a long spear had already condensed in his right hand. The long spear was completely blood-red. It was the demon-devouring dragon spear condensed from the blood of the corpse ghosts that Immorse had killed earlier. The dragon spear was 5 meters long. Immorse held the long spear in his hand and directly pierced towards the giant palm of the giant corpse ghost in the sky. The corpse ghost once again let out a human laugh. A mere ant wants to shake a tree? Ridiculous. As it spoke, a large cluster of dark clouds suddenly floated over in the sky, blocking the light of the sun. In just a few seconds, the clear sky suddenly became covered with dark clouds. Then heavy rain poured down. Chapter 469. The originally cloudless sky was suddenly covered in dark clouds. Following that, heavy rain poured down. From the appearance of the dark clouds to the heavy rain, in just a short 5 seconds, this completely violated the laws of nature. At the same time, in the heavy rain, thousands of mud monkeys jumped out from the 4 mud waterfalls around them. These mud monkeys were not solid but condensed from mud. Tens of thousands of mud monkeys swarmed towards Immorse, covering the sky and covering the earth. At this time, even a Grand Desolate Master would probably have a mental breakdown. This was because no matter how strong a spirit reader was, they would not be able to condense mud into other shapes, not to mention that these mud monkeys could attack. The most terrifying thing was that the aura of each mud monkey had reached the Grand Desolate Master realm. Tens of thousands of Grand Desolate Masters attacked one person. Even if this person was a super expert on the continent, a level 5 Grand Desolate Master. At this moment he would probably be scared. However, Immorse did not pay attention to those mud monkeys at all. He held the demon-devouring dragon spear tightly in his hand and continued to stab towards the right palm of the giant corpse ghost in the sky. At this moment, the tens of thousands of mud monkeys had already surrounded Immorse. They bared their fangs and brandished their claws as they pounced towards Immorse. However, what was surprising was that Immorse did not pay attention to them at all. When these mud monkeys bit Immorse, they could not even bite through Immorse's skin. At the same time, Immorse's demon-devouring dragon spear had already clashed with the giant palm of the giant corpse ghost. That giant palm was instantly sent flying under the demon-devouring dragon spear. Immorse and his spear pierced through the giant palm that covered a radius of more than 10 kilometers. They continued to go deeper and pierced into the giant corpse ghost's forearm. Then they went forward until they reached its shoulder. Finally, they reached its chest. Puff! A muffled sound of flesh being pierced could be heard. It turned out that there was another corpse ghost hidden in the giant corpse ghost's chest. Immorse's demon-devouring dragon spear had pierced into the corpse ghost's body. The corpse ghost immediately let out a miserable scream and its body instantly scattered as it fled. Blood was gushing out of its chest. At the same time, the body of the giant ghoul instantly turned into a large amount of mud and fell from the sky. As for the tens of thousands of mud monkeys in the surroundings, they also turned into mud and fell from the sky. The 4 huge waves formed by the muddy water also fell from the sky. The dense dark clouds in the sky also quickly receded. Immorse had just plundered the ghoul's memories and knew that it was the ghoul's doing. This ghoul had mutated and gained the wind attribute. Through constant practice, it could perfectly control the wind. For example, using wind to blow mud and water to condense huge waves, condense thousands of monkeys, or condense giants that reached the sky and touched the earth. At the same time, the dark clouds in the sky were also caused by it controlling the wind. All of this seemed very frightening, especially after it raised the aura of these mud monkeys to the Grand Desolate Master level. It became even more frightening. Anyone who saw it would feel fear. On top of that, the ghoul was constantly using language to give psychological hints to the enemy. Therefore, when many humans saw this, they would feel that this was the power of a god. In front of such power, they didn't even have the chance to escape. This was also the reason why the Grand Desolate Master who escaped said that there really was a god in this world. As for the other Grand Desolate Masters who died here, it was because they had been here for too long and had inhaled too much corpse poison. They thought that they were strong and weren't afraid of inhaling such a small amount of corpse poison. But they didn't know that as time passed, it was like boiling a frog in warm water. In the end, very few Grand Desolate Masters were able to return. As for Immerse, he had a physique that was immune to poison, so he naturally wasn't afraid of this corpse poison. Moreover, when he used the devil dragon's eye to observe just now, he could easily see the true face of all of this. He knew that the wind attribute ghoul was behind all of this. Therefore, the moment he attacked, he went straight for the wind attribute ghoul. The wind attribute ghoul was heavily injured, so everything it controlled naturally no longer existed. However, what made Immerse a little regretful was that when his devil-devouring dragon spear was about to pierce the ghoul's head, it still used a wind attribute technique to cause the tip of his spear to deviate from its target. Only then did it injure its shoulder. However, this was the devil-devouring dragon spear. Even if it only injured its shoulder, it would still be enough to make it suffer. However, in reality, this wind attribute ghoul recovered very quickly. After the wind attribute ghoul escaped with its injuries, Immerse continued to use his dragon sense to kill these ghouls. However, after a short 10 minutes, the wind attribute ghoul appeared again. This time it didn't pretend to be a ghost. Instead, it suddenly appeared behind Immerse and clawed at Immerse's back with its sharp claws. Immerse dodged and dodged the ghoul. When he turned around to attack it, it quickly flew into the distance. Its speed was so fast that it surpassed any infected creature Immerse had ever seen. Moreover, when Immerse tried to attack it with his dragon sense, he found that it seemed to be invisible. His dragon sense couldn't attack it at all. Immerse frowned slightly. This guy was a little difficult to deal with. Although in terms of level it was only equivalent to a level 7 Desolate Hunter, it was still a little troublesome to kill it. However, Immerse's purpose here was to collect kill points. As for this guy, it didn't matter if he killed it or not as long as it didn't bother him anymore. However, this guy clearly had no intention of giving up. It knew that it couldn't defeat Immerse head-on, so it often turned invisible in the wind and slowly approached Immerse. Then it would suddenly launch a fatal blow. Immerse had his dragon sense enveloping the surroundings and was always vigilant, so he wasn't afraid of this. However, this was really annoying. It continuously harassed Immerse for half an hour. Even Immerse was slightly angry. This guy still didn't hold back. Although it couldn't kill Immerse, Immerse couldn't kill it either. And it could constantly provoke Immerse's bottom line through words. Immerse had no choice but to use his mind. With a teleport he moved hundreds of kilometers away. However, just as he appeared, the wind attribute ghoul also appeared. Immerse teleported again, but the wind attribute ghoul followed him and teleported over again. It looked at Immerse with a despicable expression and chuckled. "It's useless. Don't struggle. This is my world and I am the god here. No matter where you run, I can catch up. So you'd better surrender." Immerse's heart was filled with anger. However, after hearing his words, his head moved slightly and he asked coldly, "No matter where I go, you can catch up?" The wind attribute ghoul looked smug. It crossed its arms in front of its chest. "Of course." Immerse asked again, "What if I go to another world?" You're tuning in to the Zhou Xian's Legacy YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.